Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Management Reporter Series Part 1, Creating Balance Sheets. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us today. There are a couple of housekeeping items we'd like to mention before we begin the presentation. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please either raise your hand so that we can unmute you, or you can submit them to the GoToWebinar question box. We will be answering questions throughout the presentation and will also be following up after the presentation to answer any additional questions. I'd like to introduce today's speaker. We have Philip Nichols, who is a principal GP consultant here at Socius. So at this point, Philip, I believe we're ready to transition over to you.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. As was announced, we're going to be doing our Management Reporter Series Part 1, Creating a Balance Sheet. And of course, so what we'll do is here, we're going to go ahead and jump right in. Let me, give me just a moment here. And of course, as I mentioned, the housekeeping items, if everyone's interested, you want to hide or show your control panel, full screen, and of course, there's buttons for you to raise a hand and a place you can enter in the questions. Let me end my show here, and I'm going to jump over to my system here, and we'll show you Management Reporter. Hide this. There we are. Excellent. Okay. For those of you who are, we'll take this a little slow at start. I also want to show you everything because I'm not sure if some people have even launched Management Reporter and opened it yet and gotten around in there, but we'll start at the beginning. I'm going to go ahead and open my Report Designer. That's where we're always starting from. Next one, we'll close this down because I won't be starting a new one. Okay, so here we are in our Management Reporter. And if you've had a chance to look around in here, you're familiar with this layout. If you have actually never launched Management Reporter before, this is your first time in. There's certain things we're going to be setting up today. We're going to be looking here at our report definitions, which are basically the reports you've generated. And we're going to look at row definitions, column definitions, and we'll also look at a reporting tree definitions. Your rows, your columns, your reporting trees, those are the three things that combine to make a reporting definition itself. So let's start out by looking at a row definition. All right, this is a blank row definition, and this is where you're going to create every row that's going to exist on any report that you build using Management Reporter. Of course, there are a few rows. There are row codes. You have description columns, format code columns, related formulas, rows and units columns, overrides, balances, print controls, column restrictions, row modifiers, links to financial dimensions. We'll be actually looking at most of these today, so you'll get a little better understanding of what happens within each column. Okay, so for our balance sheet, I'm going to start with a very basic way to get the information in here that you're going to need to start building your balance sheet on. So what I'm going to do is I have my blank row. I'm going to go into my edit menu. I'm going to insert rows from dimensions. What that's going to do is going to let Management Reporter look at my chart of accounts in Great Plains, and it's going to pull in the accounts and the account descriptions that I'm looking for. So I'll click here, and you see this window opens. It's showing me dimensions, which are, of course, the individual segments of my account. In my instance, I have a 3-segment account, and then I have my account categories. When you use this window, any segment with a pound sign is going to be ignored when you're importing your data. Any segment containing the ampersands, that's what the system will pull in. So you can either pull in, like in my instance, I'm only looking at the natural account, but I could also choose to pull in my natural and divisions, or my natural, my division, and my department. So you can pull in your full strings if you need to. Now, since I'm only doing my natural accounts, we're doing a balance sheet, then I know, for instance, in my chart of accounts, it's going to start in the 1000s, and I'm going to end my range $39.99. That'll be right before my sales start at 4,000. Click OK. The system will automatically generate. As you notice, it pulls in each one of my natural accounts in the range that I selected, and it pulls in the description that's associated with that account in Great Plains. Now these can be actually typed over if you want to change them to something else. So what I'm going to show you here is exactly how simple something like just doing a basic balance sheet and then building on that can be. So I'm going to scroll down here in my listing. You'll see we're going into our 2000s now and our 3000s. Let me go right up here. Okay. So right here, I'm going to highlight these rows, and your row sets work very similarly to the way an Excel spreadsheet will. You can highlight, you can right click, you can insert rows. And every time you insert a row, the system puts a certain spacing between each row, which is based on the setups of your system itself. I can continue inserting rows, and if I keep on inserting rows, at some point I will run out of numbering, but the system does allow you to renumber your rows if you need to, because you cannot generate a report that has blank rows in it. So for right now, I'm just going to type in total assets. That's a description of my choice. My format codes, that's where I tell the system what I'm starting to do. In this instance, I want to add together all the rows above where I'm at right now. Adding or subtracting requires a tote format code. Now I know my rows. We'll scroll back up here to the top real quick. Start at 100, that's my row code in A. Scroll all the way back down here to 1780. So all I have to do is type in here is 100, 1780. The system will automatically add all those rows together when I generate this report. Let's move a little further down. Okay, now this is where my liability accounts start. And just like above, with one difference, right here in column F, the normal balance, these accounts have a typical balance of credit set up in Great Plains. And so when they're pulled into Management Reporter, it automatically assigns this C to those accounts. I'll scrolling down. And you'll notice they're all here. They have C's all the way down. And then it will stop at some of them, which are either have to be set up as debit accounts or contra accounts. So I'm going down to the very bottom again. I'm just going to put in here my total liabilities and equity. And again, I have to put in a formula of everything I'm adding together. In this instance, I'm starting on 1810. So again, I can either type in or select from the drop-down what I'm wanting the row to do. 1810, and I'm going to go through 4330. Okay. The reason I'm going through 4330, of course, is I need to have a row in there for my net income. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in manually. Okay. I'll need to go ahead and apply the C myself. And then what I have to do here is, of course, determine the amounts that make up my net income. In my particular system, it's going to start with account 4,000 and go through account 9,999. Now, because I'm wanting to use a range, the easiest thing to do, I can click here. This opens up the dimensions of my accounts, and this is where I'm able to enter in the various segments of my account. I want to start with 4,000. I want to end with 99.99. I can click OK. The system automatically inserts it. I hit OK one more time, and it's inserted that into my simple balance sheet. Okay, so I'm going to save this. I'm just going to call it my test balance sheet row. I'm going to hit OK. Okay. I'm going to go now. The next thing I have to do is create a column set. So I'm going to go New, and choose my columns. And this is where you set up the columns that your report is going to have. And how many columns you have is really kind of up to you and the requirements of your reporting. Now, the first thing you have to do is tell the system what type of column you're setting up. The first one I want is going to be a description. What this column is going to do is display all of the descriptions that pulled in with my accounts from my row set. The next column I'm going to set up is an FD column. This is amounts from financial dimensions. And this basically is going to display the amounts that are associated with the accounts from the row set itself. Now the book code, it automatically pulls in actual. Actual means, of course, your actual chart of accounts information, but you can also, by clicking on this, switch it over to any budgets if you're doing your budgeting within Great Plains itself. Fiscal year is set to base. That's automatic. That's all that means is whatever year you're generating your report for. Period, same thing, is base. What am I generating this report for? What month? January through December. The only thing we really need to change right now, since we're doing our balance sheet, we need to change our periods covered from periodic to year to date. I'm going to click up in here. I can actually type in my own headers. I'm just giving them simple headers right now. Okay, I'm going to save this. Okay, let's close all this information down. Okay, now see what happens here. Then we need to combine that row and column I just created into a report definition. So I'm going to do a new report. Okay. This automatically comes up. It's going to be connected to your company database. You have a detail level from which you can make choices, and you have your provisionals. Your detail levels are, do you want to see only the financial, do I want to see financial and account, or financial account and transaction level details? Your provisional, you can run posted, posted and unposted, or unposted activity only. So what we're going to do first of all is set up our report by going into the row and the column drop downs and choosing the row and column that I just set up. I'll choose my test balance sheet row, and I'll choose my test balance sheet column. Okay, now the next thing I have to do is decide what I'm actually running my report for. So you see I have base periods and base years. These are related to the two base columns, or fields I should say, that we looked at on our column set. Let me open that back up again real quick. And again, base fiscal year and the base period. Okay, now I'm going to run this. I want to do a January report for this year of 2017. As it is right now, all I have to do is hit generate. This little window pops up, and it's going to show you a report is generating. If anything happens when you're generating the report, there's warnings. They will appear in this small window down here. Okay, system has generated my report. You notice it's not very pretty. There's lots of blanks on here, but I do want to scroll down through this. You'll notice my total assets, 501508. Scroll on down a little further. Total liabilities and equity, 501508. My balance sheet does balance. So it's somewhat easy to create just a basic balance sheet using Management Reporter, as long as, of course, all of your account totals are in order. So what we're going to look at now, I'm going to leave this report just like it is, but I'm going to start to make it look better because I want it to be a better looking balance sheet. So the first thing I'm going to do is make the system get rid of some of all those blank lines. So here in your report dimensions, you have 4 tabs. You have report tab, an output distribution tab, headers and footers, and settings. First thing I'm going to do is go to my settings tab. Now from here, I can turn off the display rows with no amounts because I don't want to see those right now. And of course, there are other choices on here, such as displaying blanks for 0 amounts, displaying my currency symbol automatically, any digit separators. I can determine how I want to display negative numbers. If I turn this on, of course, they would all show up in red, and I can choose what I want to use to signify those negative numbers. Now, something else I want to do is actually start rounding my information. Right now, I'm just going to turn it on to whole dollars. So I've turned on my rounding. I've turned off display rows with no amounts. I'm going to go back and regenerate my report again, since it just takes a moment. Now you'll notice we have a lot smaller report. And of course, since all I did was pull in every account on its own individual line and then just turn off the display rows with no amounts, this report would actually grow dynamically as the accounts themselves began to accumulate data. But let's say that's not really what you want to do, because there is, of course, a lot of data in our row set. Okay, now there are actually other things that we can do to our balance sheets and to our row set to make our report start looking better. I'm going to go here and I'm going to insert a couple of rows. Shall we do one more? I want to have 3 in there. Okay. So let's say I wanted to add all of these accounts together and just show these particular cash accounts. There's actually a few ways we can do this. The first one, we can simply type in a cash. We can do a tote because we're adding rows together, 100 through 400. Okay, So what this is going to do, of course, is put in a total for rows 100 to 400. And since I'm going to be using this as my cache, and I don't want to necessarily see all of the individual rows, this is where I can go to column G, my print control. I can make these columns non-printing. All I have to do is select that. It'll put an NP in there, and I can either hit Control C or right click and copy, and I can actually copy this down to all of the rows that I no longer want to print. Something else I can do, I can also have multiple commands in the same field. So in addition, if I wanted to, if these were actually printing, I can do things. I have currency formats. I can suppress rows as I need to. I can suppress roll-ups, suppress roundings. Now, since all of these are going to be non-printing, this is the row I want to see. It'll be the first row of my report. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the currency symbol for this row. Okay, I'm just going to save this real quick. Go back and regenerate our report again. There's my report again. Notice this time only my cash line is showing up, pulling the total, and of course my balance sheet does still balance. So a lot of what you'll be doing when you're setting up your balance sheet is determining the actual layout of the rows. So I'm going to show you a couple of other things we can also do with our row sets, ways to make it easier to generate your balance sheets. So as I said, of course, we have these right now. Now let's say I wanted to look at this a different way. I didn't necessarily decide to pull in all of my rows. So I'm going to do another row set. All right, here I have a nice blank one. Let me get these kind of sized so we can look at both of them as I'm going through here a little ways. Let's move you over here. Make this a little bigger since it's the blank one I'm wanting to start with. Okay, so let's say I was going to sit here and manually create my entire balance sheet by typing it into a row definition. So let's say I want to start, and I'll move down a couple lines. I want to start with my cash. Okay, so I know in this instance, I used all of these accounts to reflect what was going to be in my cash. So let's go over here and look at our dimensions, which are of course actually the natural accounts we're using. Come on. Okay, so you see I'm using from account 1100 down to account 1140 in this particular calculation. So instead of having to have this tote row of all these individual cash accounts, I can instead simply put in a cash row and scroll over to my, come on, there we go, over to my financial dimensions, which is empty right now. I can double click on here, and just as I did before, I can now enter a range of accounts. So I can say 1100 through 1130. I can hit OK. It's pulling in my range. I tell it OK. All right. Now with that range of accounts in there, I'm going to get the exact same results as I get from adding up all of the above lines on this particular row. And from there, all I have to do is I keep setting up the various accounts based on where I want them to show on my actual balance sheet. So of course I can combine all of my ARs together if I want to. I can combine my inventories together. I can leave the WIP out if I want to. I have my fixed assets like my prepaid expenses. I've got my furniture and fixtures, computer equipment, machinery equipment. So all of these things can be grouped together on the sheet simply by using accounts or ranges of accounts. So let's scroll back up here. Now you notice I kind of left a couple of little cash accounts out, my savings and cash suspense. So I could actually add those in. Let's say I want to call them cash other. Now these two accounts, I believe, are 1140. Sorry about that. There we go. 1140 and 1190. I can go again into my links. Now those, I don't necessarily want to put a range in there because I could at some point have other accounts between 1140 and 1190 that I don't necessarily want to include in my cash other. So what I can do there, instead of putting in a range, is I can click in here. I can type in my 1140, get down to my next row, put in my 1190. I hit OK. And the system, of course, let me try to expand this a little bit if I can get there and get around the controls for the webinar. There we go. So it's showing plus account 1140 to plus account 1190. So it's going to add those two together. It's doing the exact same thing as this range right here would. Something else I can do. Let's say I did want to combine all of these together into just one cash row. Yep, sorry about that. Let me set up another one. And if you've used FRX before, you'll recognize this. The system lets you use wildcards to replace numbers within your segments. So if you look, we'll actually see that all of my cash accounts start with 11. So I can actually just type a 11 in here, 2 question marks. If I hit OK, the system inserts the dimension just like that. And that's telling Management Reporter when it generates to pull every account that begins with 1111. And it will go ahead and sum all of those together automatically for you. So you don't necessarily have to have every individual account on a row set and have totals for all of the individual accounts being added together. So you're able to really compress the way you're doing the data by putting less and less into the balance sheet and using your financial dimensions to join accounts together. I'll close that right now and go back to my let's put in a couple more rows. Do 3. So again, we're back here. Okay, and I'm going to make these non-printing. Okay, I'm going to sum these up. That's going to be 430 through 460. Okay, just as above, this is simply going to total those 2 rows. But I'm going to add some other things in here because this isn't really looking too great right now. So I'll put in some rows. We'll start putting in a little better formatting. So all the formatting for your rows are done, of course, from your row definition. And this works just like Excel or Word does. You have all of your controls up here to help control your formatting. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my assets. I'm going to make it bold, and I'm going to go ahead and underline it. I'm going to come down here to my cache, and I'm going to hit Control, and I can select other cache also. So now that I've selected them both like this, I can do things at the same time to them, such as I can go up here and increase the indentation on those so that they'll be set underneath the actual assets title a little bit. If I want to, I can make them bold or not. I can change the size of the default account or the default fonts, sorry about that, as I need to. But I am going to go ahead and make those bold right now. I also want to add some underlining to these. Not underlines, but total lines. So I go right here. If I click right above my tote, from within here, just like the tote that you see here, there are multiple things you can do with this particular column. You can do calculations, you can do descriptions, you can center or left, right titles. You can insert column breaks, you can insert page breaks, you can insert underscores. I'm going to do some underscores. All I have to do is choose underscore. And that automatically tells the system to just generate an underscore right there. I'm going to put another one here. This is again just to show you kind of how you can generate the various underscores. So let's save this and run our report again. So now my balance sheet is loaded in, and I apologize, I did put that in the wrong place, but you notice I am getting my underlines, and you can, of course, put these in anywhere you need them to separate out your various totals. So let me go back in. Okay. Now, of course, this, depending on the size of your balance sheet, this could be quite a bit of typing if you're trying to enter all of these manually. However, since again, this is somewhat Excel based, if you do have your balance sheet, like in an Excel spreadsheet, let me open up another row definition here. I have one actually in my Excel spreadsheet. Let me get rid of some of these highlights here so we don't have to look at them. There we go. So this is a very basic layout of a balance sheet. So I could go into the balance sheet I had in Excel, and I can actually copy that into Management Reporter. Once I get it copied in, then I can actually start the formatting itself. Like all of my total rows, I can go ahead and make them totals. So it's very easy to start copying things down once you know what you need to have in particular cells. Get right there. Get right there. Now I can start, if I want to, I can select various parts. Just as you saw me do earlier. And I can get these to move all at once. Say I want to indent all of these. I simply select my indent button. It moves everything in automatically. Then I want to, of course, I can change bolding as I need to. I can change any colors. Any of this formatting of the fonts can be changed from within the row dimension itself. Now, once I get this done, of course, I still will need to go in and put in what my new accounts are going to be. Now, I know we were looking earlier at how we could just do it by using the actual chart of accounts to pull in the data. We looked at how you could do ranges of accounts. There's something else you can do that will actually make it easy for you to create your balance sheets. And that is by using your account categories. Of course, account categories are things that you have to enter every time you set up a new account in Great Plains. So in this instance, I'm on my cash line. I can again come over here, drill down to my financial dimensions, and instead of using my account, let's say I want to actually use my account category. I can drill down and see which account categories are available to me. The one I want is my cash. So I can select my cash. It puts it in there, hit OK, it inserts it. Now I could also, of course, type this in if I knew exactly how it was laid out. Because you know some of the categories are multiple words. All right, so now it's saying account category cash. So when I generate using this, then it's going to pull in every account that is associated with that account category. And you can continue on, such as accounts receivable, same thing. Simply choose my category of accounts, and then every account that falls into that category is going to be totaled onto this one row. So you can keep going down through your rows, and that will really make it much easier for you to generate a balance sheet, especially if you have lots of accounts that are having to go into each particular row of your balance sheet. Now, what you can also do, though, is, of course, you can combine things together. You can have an account category here, and you can come down to a row like this and say, I'm going to type in my 1190, even though I know it's probably already included in my cash. So I can use combinations where one row I may have a category, another one I may have an individual account, or I may have a range of accounts. And I can combine all those together into one total, again, simply by adding 130 to 160. Now I want to go back actually to my original balance sheet that we've been looking at, and I've been showing you different things on here. We'll close this for a moment. Okay, and go back to our column set. Now on our column set, we were only looking at 1 year of data. And we can make this a little bit better by, of course, formatting also. Our header text. I can either type text in here, or I can insert auto text, which is generated every time the report is ran. In this instance, I want to do I'm going to pull in my fiscal year. Now let's say I want to do a multi-year balance sheet. I'm going to add in another column, another financial dimension column. And of course, it's going to be year to date. But in order for me to see last year's data, what I can do is I can go to my fiscal year row, go into my base. You see I have some selections here. So I can do a base minus. I just put that in there and I tell it how many years back I want to go. So I do a base minus 1. And I'm going to put in my auto text for my header. I'm going to save this so I can generate it. And again, my base is January of 2017. Now I have my 2017 and my 2016 January balance sheets displayed on the same report. And I can, of course, have as many years of data as I want to. Now, something else you can also do. Let me close this down real quick. Now, trees. We haven't really talked about trees yet. Trees are a way of further segregating your reports, such as if you want to be able to run a report by a department or a division, you can use a tree to accomplish that. Now, I'm going to create my own tree because trees can also be used for multi-company reporting. So this is a tree. This is a basic layout of a tree. So I'm going to come here. Now you see I have multiple companies. So I'm going to choose this because I know it's my current company. I'm going to type in its name. I'm going to choose one of my other ones. This might have some data in it. We'll know in just a moment. Oh, it doesn't like that one. I must not know how to do it. Okay, sorry about that. Let me try a different one. Let me try my test one then. Well, it's not going to let me collect. I apologize. I wanted to show you. I can show you one company though, even though I would like to have shown you a two-company report. If you set up a tree based on companies and you decide to use that tree, which I'm going to do, you can actually, I'll go and do a new column. Within your columns, I'm going to put my description column back in. Now I'm going to put in financial and financial. I'm going to do two. You can actually link your column set to your trees. And what that will let you do is, it's not the one I want. Let's see here. Reporting units. You can choose the tree that you're wanting to work with, choose the unit from your tree, in this instance, the company, and you can lock a column into an individual company. So if I had multiple companies, I'll just choose another one, but it will be the same one in this instance. I could use a column set like this to run a multi-company balance sheet. So I could see all of my companies together on the same report at one time and look at their balance sheets. Now, of course, if I save it and run it like this, it will, of course, give me the data. Same on both of my companies. Okay, and I think that is my time to stop right there. So hopefully you've seen it's actually very simple to create basic balance sheets using Management Reporter. And then, of course, how far you want to go with it, how nice you want to make it look is really, that's kind of up to you. The system is very open and allows you to do a lot of the same formatting you can do in Word or Excel to make your report look exactly the way you want it to. And with that, I think we're done. I'm going to pass it back over to and see if there's anyone with any questions about anything they've seen so far.
Yep, there are a couple questions, but before we start Q&A, I will mention that our next webinar is June 22nd from 1 to 2 on moving your GP environment to the cloud. And then we'll have part 2 of Management Reporter on July 6th. And then you can see all the webinars on our website, socius1.com/events. So with that, I will jump into a couple questions. So the first one, when you enter your range, will it ignore your posting accounts?
Will it ignore posting accounts?
Yes.
Actually, what you have to do is when you're using an actual range of accounts, let me go in here and let me add in an actual range so you can see what I'm talking about. Like in this instance, let's say it's 1100. Again, I will go down to 1130. So it puts in this range, and of course, when I hit OK, it's going to save that range right there. Let me clear this out a little bit so it's not so. There we go. So I'll go back in. But let's say I didn't necessarily want every account within this range. I can go in here, I can look to see actually what's in there. I've got my 1100. Let me pull this one out. Okay, so from 1100 down to 1130 was the range I was selecting. But let's say I did not want the payroll cash included within my range. Okay, I'll still put my 1130 as my ending date, and it puts it in there. And then I'll remove the 1110 from the range by going to the next row down. I click right here, change this to a minus sign. I put in my 1110, and now the system knows to give me this entire range and then subtract this particular account out when the report is generating. And that will prevent, and you can have as many of those, or you can add in accounts from other ranges, things that aren't necessarily cash. You can add in different things into your range in order to get the correct number that you want. Does that answer the question? Is that kind of what you were thinking of?
Yes, it looks like it.
Okay.
The next question, will the year-to-date amount bring in your beginning balances?
Yes, it does. And also, what you can do also if you want to is, let's go back to our columns real quick. It always pulls in everything for the entire year, including the beginning balances. But you can also, if you wanted to, you can create a column, and you could actually only display your beginning balances within its column itself if you wanted to. So you could separate out the beginning balances and then have the rest of the year if you wanted to. And that would be simply, do a calculation. So we have our beginning balances, our year-to-date here. We can just do a formula that says D minus C. So when we generated our report, of course, we'll make you non-printing because we don't need to see you now. So something like this column would no longer show. This would display my year-to-date beginning balances, and this would show everything for the rest of the year except the beginning balances. But otherwise, all you have to do is just select a regular year, and it'll pull in those balances.
All right. The next question, are you able to pull from multiple companies in one of these reports?
Yes, but you'll have to do the way I was showing you. In order to generate a multi-company report, you have to set up a reporting tree. And in this instance, like I could keep setting up. In mine, I have to set up the same company over because my other ones can't connect. I call it Fabricam 2. And you would just continue on, and you would choose each of your databases and put in the name that you want to associate with that company. Actually, I want this to be 3. Of course, now you would have different database names because you have different companies. But once you set up this simple tree, then you'll be in your column set. Let's open it back up. Let's clear these out right now. And you'll set up, of course, multiple columns. Okay, so I'm going to turn this one back to base. Put in the same header. Okay, and all I have to do at this point is go into my reporting unit line, and for each column will represent a separate company, and I just link it to that portion of that tree. And that allows you to do multi-company reporting. And of course, you can do that for any report in Management Reporter if you have more than one company. As long as you link the columns to your tree, or you can just do the tree itself. It's really up to you. You could have just one column, but then run the tree and just choose from the tree as you're generating the report. It depends on if you just need to see one at a time or if you want to see all of your companies at one time, which method you use.
All right. The next question. Under the date information saved with report definition, the default base period is S-1. What does this mean?
That is correct. That means system -1, which is system date -1. I'm going to close this, and I will show you here. I will save this. Let me give it a name real quick. And I'll close everything down. Okay. So it is, as you see by the bottom left of my screen, you'll see it's June. That's my system date is June. When I open up my report definition, oh, look at that. Oh, helps to open the right thing, doesn't it? Apologize. Okay. When I open my report definition, since it has S-1, system -1, then it automatically dates the report as May. If it was like July, when I open this, it would automatically date it as June. So it always goes back 1 month because it's like the system's assuming that you've reached the end of the month and you're opening this to generate your previous month reports. Of course, you can also switch it. You can go back 2 months. You can go forward a month. You can set it to always be the current date, current -1, current -2, current +1. But I do normally leave it on the sys1, and the date itself is not saved. So I could change this. I can generate this for any period available to me and for any year available to me. But once I close it and reopen it, it'll go back to the default S-1 date. Now, however, there is a way that if you run it for multiple dates, when you go into the report library, all of your reports always automatically generate into the report library. And all you have to do is go in here, you'll find a report, choose your report, right-click, show versions. It's going to show every time you generated that report. So if you have already generated one for a previous date, you can come in and find when you generated that report and reprint it from here without having to regenerate it again from within Management Reporter.
All righty. Okay. Next question. When you use the rounding feature, do the totals automatically add to the rounded amounts?
All right. I'm sorry, I should have shown that to you. There is something you actually have to do on your rounding to set that up to run correctly. Now, normally the roundings, of course, work, but you do need to occasionally set up, just in case the system can't round 100%, and there are little, like, pennies left over or something like that. You can actually, within your report, set that up. So when you have your row open, if you go to Edit, there's actually a rounding adjustment feature that you can turn on. What it wants to know is it gives you 4 bits of information: a rounding adjustment row, total asset row, total liabilities equity row, and your limits. The rounding adjustment row is which account on your balance sheet do you want the system to add any rounding differences to. You could choose any account row here on your balance sheet. Like, let's say for some reason I wanted everything to go to cash payroll. I would put in 340. My total assets row, in this instance, I don't know it. Hold on just a moment. Let me scroll on here and let's look at these. This is what I get for building this really huge report. So I know my 4360 are my total liabilities. Scroll up a little more. That says 1792. Okay. So now I can go back, do my rounding adjustments. Again, I want to go to row 340. It goes into my petty cash and adjusts that amount to account for the rounding. I type in my 1792, which is my total assets, 4360, and let's say I'm going to put in $2. That's the limit of the adjustments I want it to make and put into that particular account on row 340. But when you use this rounding adjustment, you need to watch it, because if something's wrong with your balance sheet, it may try to throw a huge amount into your rounding account. But if it tries to push something outside of, like in my case, my $2 limit, when I start actually, let me close this down real quick and open up my report. Yes, I do want to save that. Thank you for asking. When I actually start generating this report, if it is finding rounding errors that are outside of my $2 limit, a warning message will come up in this window right here, and it'll show me whatever dollar amount it has found that is outside of that rounding adjustment limit. So you need to be a little careful when you use that and make sure you've got the adjustment amount set up correct.
Alrighty, another question. Will the report tell you accounts are duplicated?
There is actually, let me close this back down. Let's see, I always remember which one this is actually on. Actually, no, I'm thinking about that. So you have to look for duplicate accounts. It should actually print a report afterwards if it finds those. But it doesn't give warnings or anything like that. Yeah.
All right, and then last question before we run out of time. Will the range include unit accounts?
Okay, that depends. What you have to do actually, if you're doing unit accounts, you can use the unit accounts as part of your financial dimensions, yes. But now that's part of what you have to be careful depending on where you put your unit accounts, because sometimes people will put their unit accounts way down in the chart, and when you're setting up your net income, you want to make sure that you don't include the unit accounts as part of your net income, or that would of course throw off your balances. But you are able to add unit accounts to all of your reports.
Alrighty. Well, it is 2 o'clock. If we did not get to your question, we will definitely reach out afterwards to make sure those are answered. But thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope to have you join us on June 22nd for our next one. Thank you.
Thank you.